Canada is hella funny. For all the crap Americans and others give Canada, they just happen to be the funniest and the weirdest people on earth. I know so. It's in my blood. Saturday Night Live, SNL. Every Saturday night, millions of Americans sit down in their lazy boy sofa for 90 minutes to watch a program called Saturday Night Live. The NYC-based comedy variety show has been on the air nonstop since 1975. It's become a legendary keystone of American culture, something which binds us together as a country of freaks. But at least a country of freaks that know how to laugh at themselves. All the great American comedians of the last 3 decades, at one point or another, were featured on this show. Little do viewers know, some of their most admired SNL comedians are actually, that's right, Canadians. In fact, the show was created by a Canadian, Lorne Michaels, who has produced and written the show for 30 years now. North America loves SNL because it's always 90 minutes of the most spontaneous, off-the-wall, and cutting-edge comedy anyone has ever seen. It has always been broadcast live, and over the entire history of the show, there has only been one major foul. That was Charles Rocket's use of the F-word in a 1981 show, which they immediately fired him for. Chevy Chase, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, Mike Myers, Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, and Will Ferrell all entered into stardom as comedians by being featured as regulars on Saturday Night Live. And which one of these stars is Canadian, you ask? Mike Myers. I used to work at an ice cream shop, shut up, don't laugh, in Soho, New York City. One day I saw Mike Myers walking down the street, grinning ear to ear and dragging a hockey stick. This is the only first-hand interaction I've had with a famous comedian, and now that I think about it, it makes so much sense. Myers, after all, is a Canadian. It's only right that he had a hockey stick with him as he wandered around Soho. I would have liked to serve him an ice cream, but at that time, I didn't know he was Canadian, so I didn't bother. Well, I've done some research, and it turns out Myers' parents are Brits. But he has dual citizenship because he lived in Canada all of his young life. You probably know Myers from such infamous roles as Wayne in Wayne's World, Stuart in So I Married an Axe Murderer, and Austin Powers and Mr. Evil in Austin Powers. From these Hollywood roles and his roles in SNL, Myers has popularized many American catchphrases. From the Austin Powers films, there was,
"Oh, behave. Yeah, baby, yeah.
and
Shall we shag now or shall we shag later?"
And from the classic Wayne's World, there was, not, which teenagers overused for years, and shawing. Last but not least, from his Linda Richmond character on SNL, talk amongst yourselves. And it's like butter. Jim Carrey. Like many disturbed youth who later go on to become comedians, Carrey went to Catholic school as a child. Wah, wah. So did John Candy, also Canadian. This may explain a lot about the Canucks in general. But Carrey is by far the most outlandish comedian of them all. This kid was so obsessed with comedy, his high school teachers let him perform a small stand-up routine at the end of every school day. When he was still a teenager, Carrey tried out for SNL but was never cast. I'd bet you $20 he scared the pants off them at the audition. Carrey's kind of like a 14-year-old with an attention deficit disorder who refuses to take his medicine. But it turns out Hollywood recognized that as talent and scripted him for a long series of slapstick comedy roles. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, Liar Liar, and Bruce Almighty. These movies were so popular because they were idiotic. Just what the general American public loves. Catchphrases like,
"Alrighty then."
and
"Lou who, sir?"
were even used in more than one movie. But it's Carrey's dramatic roles that really display the comedian's talent. In Man on the Moon, for example, Carrey's role as comedian Andy Kaufman was hands down one of the best roles I've ever seen a comedian play. If you want to experience genius, watch this movie. His role in The Truman Show and Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind were also mind-blowing. As always, insanity equals genius. Kids in the Hall. Up until this point, we've failed to mention the quintessential Canadian comedy troupe, Kids in the Hall. Shame on us. These guys revolutionized TV comedy. The Kids consisted of 5 Canucks who had an HBO TV series that ran for 5 years. It was in some ways similar to SNL, even more akin to Monty Python's Flying Circus in its surrealism and indifference to pop culture. Instead of celebrities, the Kids featured a flying pig that entertained people in line at ATMs, and a man who loved to pretend to crush people's heads with his fingers from far away. A lot of the sketches featured a gay character, usually played by Scott Thompson, who was himself openly gay, which was revolutionary at the time. We loved to watch Kids because it represented the youth subculture of the 80s and 90s and made fun of the themes that we were all familiar with, making it both accessible and hilarious. The Kids were so fresh because they didn't feel the need to produce a polished comedy routine. Instead, their shows were raw and depended on the spontaneous interaction between their 5 personalities. They all regularly played women characters, and so cross-dressing was a trademark of the show. Sometimes their absolute comfort with playing women roles freaked audiences out and added to the surreal quality of the show. Other times, they didn't play a character at all, but appeared on the show simply as themselves. So it often seemed more like an actor's workshop than an overworked production. The show was so free-for-all that it often had to be edited down for American television, especially the last episode, which featured the story of Jesus Christ's crucifixion as told in the form of a Dr. Seuss book. Brilliant. Tom Green. Tom Green originally ran a show on Canadian cable and was later approached by MTV, where his show became all the rage for about a year in 1999 to 2000. This show was kind of a prelude to the Jackass show, which featured young kids performing extremely painful and pointless stunts and pranks, putting staples into one's butt, performing human bowling, etc., which was all the rage from 2000 to 2002. Tom Green is what you would call a shock comic, which means he makes you laugh by doing things you would never expect him to do, and on the air. This means humping a dead moose, singing songs about his bum, sucking the milk out of a cow's udder, terrorizing his parents in the morning by waking them up in a variety of brutal ways, putting a dead cow's head in the bed, yelling into a loudspeaker, having an X-rated lesbian scene spray-painted onto his father's car, and humiliating his friends in any way possible. The show was a hit among American audiences. What does this say about us? Unfortunately, the new star got testicular cancer in 2000 and the show was canceled. But Green's popularity got him roles in several Hollywood flicks, including Road Trip and Stealing Harvard. Today, Green is revolutionizing TV comedy with a live internet show that broadcasts straight from his living room. So far, the show is a hit. Callers can call Tom directly, and it's this intimacy with the crazy Canuck which contemporary fans can't get enough of. So don't be scared when you encounter a Canadian and you can't understand why they're so weird. These northern people are a rare breed who have a knack for the surreal, the absurd, and the non sequitur.